Imagine you are locked in a room, just a completely standard room.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And locked in there with you are 5 distinct, incredibly highly opinionated people.
Sounds stressful already.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Mm.
Because one of them is this obsessively logical scientist who, just needs everything to make perfect, rigorous sense.
Right.
Another's a dreaming artist. They're just constantly sketching out new worlds, totally abstract. Then you have a strict disciplinarian constantly checking their watch, an ambitious leader barking orders at everyone, and this restless explorer who's just trying to pick the lock on the door.
That is a very crowded, very loud room.
Right. And they are just arguing constantly, nonstop, over who gets to drive the vehicle of your life.
Yeah.
It is chaotic, it's loud, and frankly, it's exhausting.
I mean, anyone would be exhausted by that.
Exactly. But now, what if an ancient sage just calmly walks into that room, looked at all 5 of these screaming people and told you, hey, none of these people actually exist.
Wow.
And by the way, neither does the room.
That would, well, it would completely shatter the paradigm of whoever thought they were in charge, right? I mean, it forces a complete reevaluation of that entire ecosystem.
Yes. And that is exactly the paradigm shift we are engineering today. Welcome to a highly customized deep dive.
I am so excited for this one.
Me too. Today's mission is utterly unique. We are taking an incredibly detailed map of your mind notes you, the listener, have provided about your own internal architecture. And we're basically going to stress test it against one of the oldest, most rigorous philosophical systems on the entire planet.
It's a fascinating collision of ideas.
It really is because, listener, you have built this brilliant layered self. You have what you call Max, which is your physical interface, like the body interacting with the physical world.
Right, the hardware, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have me, which is the mental field, the processing center. And living inside that mental field is that cast of subpersonalities I just mentioned.
Which is such a brilliant way to map the mind.
Right. You've got Tommy driving creative curiosity, Addie pushing for exploration, Bannock taking the leadership reins, Devin holding the line on discipline, and Kenny just relentlessly demanding logic.
It is a remarkably sophisticated system for managing a modern identity. You've effectively created this highly functional internal operating system.
Yeah.
I mean, modern psychology would look at this and say, excellent work. You have categorized your drives perfectly.
But our mission today is to see what happens when the oldest questions about human existence just slam directly into your highly structured system.
Yes, the ultimate stress test.
We are bringing in Advaita Vedanta. This is an ancient non-dual philosophy from India. And we are going to explore the ultimate nature of reality, the illusion of separation, and really the profound freedom that comes from realizing you are not the characters you are playing.
And we aren't going to analyze this from the outside, like some dry museum exhibit.
No, definitely not.
We are going to look strictly through the lens of this tradition. Because the really fascinating thing about your notes is how uncannily close your internal architecture already is to the central inquiry of Advaita.
It's wild how well it lines up.
It is. You've built the ultimate modern vehicle, and Advaita is essentially just tapping on the window to ask who is actually sitting in the driver's seat. Is it Bannock? Is it Tommy? Or is it something else entirely?
Okay, let's unpack this right from the start.
Mm-hmm.
We have to lay out the absolute core, the central claim of Advaita Vedanta.
Yeah.
Because it's a non-dualistic philosophy.
Well, exactly. The word Advaita literally translates to not to.
Not to. So the foundational belief is that there is only one ultimate reality. Just one. No secondary substances, no hidden dimensions, just one reality, and it is called Brahman.
But we need to define Brahman very, very carefully here, because the Western mind, and I see this all the time, immediately wants to turn that word into a noun.
Like a guy in the sky.
Right. A god, an entity, or even just a giant energy field somewhere out in the cosmos. But in the tradition, Brahman is described as Sat Chit Ananda.
Sat Chit Ananda, which usually translates to existence, consciousness, and bliss, right?
Yes. But, and this is crucial, it is not a list of 3 different attributes. It's not like saying an apple is red, brown, and sweet. In Advaita, these 3 words are pointing to the exact same indivisible reality.
Wait, how does that work?
Well, let's break it down. Sat means pure existence. It is the undeniable fact of being, just the sheer isness of things.
The isness. I like that.
Right. And then sit means pure consciousness or awareness. Now, Advaita argues that existence cannot be separated from consciousness
Oh, no.
because an existence that absolutely no one is aware of is essentially a non-entity. You can't even prove it's there. And a consciousness that doesn't exist, that's just a contradiction. Therefore, existence is consciousness.
Wait, walk me through that. Are they saying that, like, a rock is conscious?
No, not in the way a human is conscious. They are saying that the foundational reality out of which the rock appears is consciousness itself.
Okay, so the rock is like a manifestation.
Exactly. The rock is a specific form appearing within existence, and that existence is, by its very nature, aware. And then the third word, ananda, which translates to bliss or fullness, means that this existence consciousness is entirely limitless.
Limitless meaning.
Yeah.
It has no boundaries.
Right. It lacks nothing. Because it has no boundaries, it has no desire, no friction, and no suffering. It is just absolute fullness.
Okay, so if Brahman is this one, infinite, perfect, seamless reality of existence and consciousness, Advaita then introduces its most radical equation. I mean, this is the ultimate drop-the-mic moment of ancient philosophy.
There really is.
It states that Atman, which is the true core self within the individual, is exactly equal to Brahman.
Atman equals Brahman. Your true self is not a piece of the ultimate reality. It is not a spark of the fire. It is the entirety of the fire.
That is so hard to wrap your head around.
It's like, think of the space inside a cup. The space inside that cup is not a different space than the space outside the cup, right?
Right.
When the cup breaks, the space doesn't suddenly merge with the outside space. It was always the exact same space. The cup just provided a temporary boundary.
Which sounds incredibly poetic and, and liberating.
Right.
But immediately, my mind, and I'm sure, Kenny, your logic subpersonality listener, is absolutely screaming this.
Yeah.
Right now, my mind goes, if I am the infinite, blissful reality of the universe, why do I have a mortgage?
Exactly.
Like, why does my back hurt? Why am I stressed out about a deadline? Why is there war?
The inevitable logical pushback.
Right. And that brings us to the concept of Maya. This is a term that gets thrown around in pop culture a lot, usually translated as illusion. And people hear that and think Advaita is saying the world is totally fake, like a hallucination.
Which is arguably the most common and destructive misunderstanding of the entire philosophy.
Yeah.
Advaita does not say the world is a hallucination.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Well, if you are having a hallucination of a pink elephant, the elephant genuinely does not exist. It's just zero reality. But the world does exist. The precise term Advaita uses for the world is mithya, which means a dependent reality.
Independent reality.
Yes. It means the world is completely real as an experience, but it is not ultimately independent. Its existence depends entirely on something else.
Okay, so let me try an analogy here. Let's see if this works. Is Maya essentially like putting on a virtual reality headset?
Okay, let's play this out.
Let's say you're playing a hyper-realistic VR horror game, right? You walk into a virtual room, and a virtual zombie jumps out of the closet and attacks you.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Your heart rate spikes. Your adrenaline pumps. Your biological fear is 100% real. You are having a very real experience of a zombie attack. But the zombie itself, it doesn't have an independent existence.
Right.
It is completely dependent on the hardware, the code, the electricity running the headset. Is that what mithya means?
It gets you halfway there, and it's a really good starting point for understanding the biological reality of the experience. But the VR analogy actually fails in one crucial aspect, and this is where Advaita becomes incredibly demanding.
Oh, really? Where does it break down?
Well, in your VR analogy, there is still a physical headset, right? There's a physical computer and a physical room you are sitting in while you play the game. You are escaping one physical reality to enter a digital one.
Right, yeah.
Advaita says Maya means there is no physical room at all. The headset itself is projecting the very concepts of space, time, and causality.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Space and time are part of the headset.
Yes. The hardware isn't a computer. The hardware is pure consciousness.
Yeah.
Maya is the inexplicable power of consciousness to appear as multiplicity without ever actually dividing itself.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's not that the world is a fake game inside a real universe. It's that the universe itself is the appearance playing out on the screen of consciousness. And the core human problem, according to this system, is avidya, or ignorance. But they don't mean ignorance like failing a math test.
No, it is strictly an ignorance of identity. It is an epistemic error, not a lack of data. And the classic ancient analogy, which we really have to cover because it is the absolute cornerstone of their teaching, is mistaking a rope for a snake in dim light.
Right, I love this one. You walk into a dark room, you see this coiled shape on the floor, and your brain just immediately screams, snake.
You feel absolute terror. You might jump back. You might start sweating. You might sprint out of the room. The fear is entirely real. The physiological response is undeniable.
But the threat is a total misperception.
Exactly. The snake never existed. The snake was purely a projection of your own mind onto the reality of the rope.
And the brilliant part of that analogy is what happens when someone just turns on the light. You don't have to get a stick and beat the snake to death.
No.
You don't have to perform an elaborate ritual to banish the snake. You just clearly see the rope, and the snake instantly vanishes, taking all the fear with it.
Precisely. Advaita says our human suffering operates the exact same way. We suffer because we mistakenly identify ourselves as the limited, changing, vulnerable characters in the world. We think we are the snake.
We think we are our bodies, our careers, our bank accounts.
Yes. Or our specific subpersonalities. We fail to recognize the rope, which is the unchanging, invulnerable awareness observing the whole scene.
So bringing this directly to you, the listener, and this incredible map you've built. You have Max, the physical body. Max is the avatar running around the physical world, experiencing pain, pleasure, fatigue.
Right.
And then you have me, the mental field, where Tommy is dreaming, Devin is organizing, and Kenny is analyzing. Advaita looks at this intricate, beautiful model and asks the ultimate question.
Which is, what is the presence that is aware of both Max and me simultaneously?
Yes.
I mean, think about it. If Kenny is actively analyzing a problem and Kenny is a function of your mind, who or what is aware of Kenny analyzing?
It can't be Kenny.
No, you cannot be Kenny because you are observing Kenny. And you cannot be the body because you are aware of the body sensations. Advaita is just this relentless pursuit of realizing you are the screen on which the movie of Max and me is playing.
Which brings us to a massive historical question, because if reality is just this single unified screen of awareness and the physical world is just a dependent projection, how in the world did ancient people figure this out?
It's a fair question.
I mean, thousands of years before virtual reality or cognitive science or modern psychological frameworks even existed, how did they get there?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to travel back to ancient India, specifically to the Upanishadic period, which roughly spans from, say, 800 to 300 BCE.
Okay.
And to understand how radical Advaita is, you really have to understand what it was reacting against.
Right, because before this, the culture was heavily, almost exclusively focused on the external. It was the era of the early Vedas. And those were largely centered around complex external rituals, massive fire sacrifices, appeasing outer deities.
Yes. It was very practical in a way.
If you wanted a good harvest, you performed a ritual.
Yeah.
If you wanted a son, you performed a ritual. If you wanted to go to heaven after you died, you performed a ritual.
Exactly. It was a highly transactional, mechanistic view of the universe. Action linked to a specific result. But over centuries, this profound exhaustion set in among the deepest thinkers of the culture.
Exhaustion. Why?
Because they realized a terrifying truth. Anything created by action is temporary.
Oh.
Think about it. If you perform a ritual to gain wealth, well, that wealth will eventually be lost or you'll die. If you perform a massive sacrifice to go to heaven, eventually your karmic merit will run out and you will fall back down.
It's like a battery running out of charge.
Exactly. They realized that external actions could never, ever produce permanent, eternal fulfillment.
And that realization led to this massive inward pivot. The seers of this era, known as the Arsis, they basically started turning away from the outer fire altars.
Yeah.
And they started looking at the inner fire of consciousness. They stopped asking, how can I manipulate the gods?
Yeah.
And started asking, who's the one asking the question?
And we have to remember, these furpieces were not academic philosophers sitting in armchairs debating semantics. They were ascetic meditators deeply exploring the absolute limits of human consciousness. And the source notes explicitly emphasize that they didn't invent this philosophy.
Right, they realized
They
it.
realized.
Like discovering the laws of thermodynamics.
Right.
You don't invent the fact that heat transfers, you just finally notice the mechanics of it.
That's a great way to put it. They discovered these profound statements, which are known as the Mahavakyas, or great sayings. Statements like Tattvam Asi, which translates to, you are that.
You are that, meaning the core of your being is the ultimate reality.
Yes. But while those seeds were planted in antiquity within the Upanishads, The philosophy as a really rigorous, defensible, logical system was truly codified centuries later by this brilliant figure named Adi Sankaracharya.
Sankara, and this is in the 8th century CE.
Correct. And the landscape Shankara stepped into was incredibly chaotic.
Paint that picture for us. What was actually going on in 8th century India?
Well, it was basically a marketplace of fierce, competing intellectual and religious interpretations. You had the ritualists who still insisted that performing physical sacrifices was the absolute only way to salvation.
Right.
Then you had various dualistic schools arguing that God and the soul were eternally separate. And crucially, you had Buddhism.
Oh, Buddhism was huge at this point.
Massive. Buddhism had established this highly sophisticated intellectual footprint, arguing for shunyata, or emptiness, and essentially denying the existence of a permanent self entirely.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because I look at Shankara like he's like a rogue visionary software developer who shows up at a massive international hardware convention.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Everyone at this convention is just screaming at each other,
Right.
right? The dualists are arguing about how to fix the broken circuit boards. The ritualists are arguing about how to perform the exact right physical motions to make the computers run faster. The Buddhists are arguing that the computer doesn't even exist.
Yes.
And Shankara just calmly walks up to the microphone, taps it, and says, "Hey, everyone. None of the hardware you are arguing about actually exists independently. You are all fighting over the illusion of the interface. The only thing that is real, the only thing that actually exists is the base code. We need to stop polishing the monitors and start looking at the code."
That is a very sharp analogy for his impact. But let's actually look at how Shankara defended this, because it wasn't just a bold claim, it was backed by absolutely devastating logic.
Okay, let's hear.
Imagine Shankara in a formal debate with a strict ritualist, a member of the Mimamsa school. The ritualist says, "Shankara, you are wrong. The soul is inherently impure, and only by performing righteous actions and sacred duties can we purify it and achieve liberation."
Which, to be fair, sounds totally reasonable to most people today. Do good things, become a good person, get a good result.
It sounds like common sense. But Shankara dismantles it systematically. He replies, action can only do 4 things to an object. It can produce it can modify it can purify it, or it can destroy it.
Okay, that makes logical sense. 4 options.
Then Shankara says, if liberation is produced by action, it is a created thing, and all created things eventually die, so it's not permanent.
Right.
If liberation is a modification of the soul, then the soul is subject to change, and whatever changes is mortal. If liberation is purifying the soul, well, that implies the soul has actual impurities that can be scrubbed away, which means the soul is a physical substance subject to decay.
Wow.
Therefore, Shankara concludes, liberation cannot be the result of any action.
Checkmate. That is amazing. So he completely corners them logically. If it's created, it will be destroyed.
Yeah.
Therefore, liberation must be something that already exists, completely untouched by our actions.
Yes. Shankara argued that liberation is purely an epistemic shift. It is mere recognition. You are already the ultimate reality. You just don't know it. No action can give you what you already have. Action can only remove the ignorance obscuring it. And he traveled across the Indian subcontinent engaging in these intense, formal philosophical debates. He didn't raise armies. He didn't launch violent inquisitions. He conquered through sheer, undeniable intellectual rigor.
And he established these monastic centers too, right?
Yes, mathas, in the 4 corners of India to preserve this specific non-dual interpretation.
And this brings up a massive paradox in the tradition. We are talking about the history of Advaita, the timeline of the Upanishads, the exact century Shankara lived. But from within the philosophy itself, history doesn't actually matter, does it?
It is deeply secondary. Shankara is revered as an unparalleled genius and a master teacher, but he is never viewed as the creator of the truth.
Right.
In Advaita, truth is not created in time. It is merely recognized in time. The timeline of history is just another movie playing out on the screen of Brahman.
Which connects so beautifully to you, the listener, because you are a world builder. You have Tommy, your creative subpersonality, who loves to design structures, explore hidden mechanics, build historical timelines for your ideas, organize the whole internal landscape.
Tommy's busy.
Very busy. But Advaita steps into your beautifully constructed historical timelines and suggests that the ultimate hidden structure is that the observer of the history is the only constant.
Yes.
Tommy can invent 1,000 worlds with 1,000 histories. But the awareness watching Tommy invent them was never born, will never die, and has no history at all.
It invites the listener to realize that while the mind loves to map out the origins of ideas, the awareness observing the mind has no origin.
So if we follow this massive historical pivot, if we strip away all the external rules, the sacrifices, the physical rituals, and we establish that truth is purely internal recognition, what are we actually left with? Because if the goal isn't going to a temple and burning incense to get a favor from a god, what does the actual culture and daily practice of this philosophy look like? How do you actually do Advaita?
That is the pivotal question for any practitioner. Because unlike many religious traditions, Advaita does not have a massive rule book of strict behavioral mandates.
No 10 commandments?
Right. There are no 10 commandments you must follow under threat of eternal damnation. The core ritual is incredibly simple, yet psychologically grueling. It is the relentless inquiry into the nature of the self.
But they do have a method, right? It's not just sitting on a couch hoping you suddenly feel like the universe.
Far from it. The traditional path involves a very rigorous, highly structured three-step method. The first step is sravana, which translates to hearing or listening.
Hearing the truth.
Yes. This means exposing yourself to the truth. You read the texts, you study the Upanishads, or you listen to a qualified teacher unfold the logic that you are not the body or the mind.
Okay, step 1. Data acquisition. Downloading the new operating system.
Exactly. But data acquisition isn't enough because the mind will naturally resist it. So step 2 is manana, which is deep, logical reflection.
Okay, what does that look like?
This is where you actively question the teachings. You analyze them and you resolve every single doubt. Advaita actually forbids blind belief.
Wait, really? It forbids it?
Yes. If you just blindly believe I am Brahman because a book told you so, you are still trapped in ignorance. You're just repeating a slogan.
Okay, let's actually do a manana exercise right now using the listener's own internal architecture. Let's pit Kenny, the subpersonality demanding pure logic, against Bannock, the subpersonality demanding leadership and control.
Oh, this would be good.
In the listener's mind, Bannock might stand up and say, I am the CEO of this life, I make the decisions, I drive the ambition, I am the core identity.
And in the process of manana, Kenny would step in using Advaitic logic to dismantle Bannock's claim. Kenny would ask, are you truly the core identity, Bannock? What happens when we go to deep, dreamless sleep every night? Do you exist in deep sleep?
And Bannock would have to admit, well, no, I shut down, I'm offline.
Then Kenny strikes the logical blow. If you disappear every night for 8 hours, yet we still exist and wake up the next morning feeling a continuity of existence, then you, Bannock, cannot be the foundational I. You are an intermittent appearance. You are an object being observed by something that does not sleep.
Boom. Kenny just logically proved that Bannock is not the true self. That is manana in action.
Exactly. You use the intellect to exhaust the intellect. And once Kenny is completely satisfied, once all logical doubts are destroyed, you move to the third step.
Nididhyasana.
Which is continuous contemplation.
Yes. Continuous deep contemplation.
How does that actually work mechanically? Like, how does contemplation finalize the process?
It is essentially rewiring the cognitive pathways. You have spent a lifetime functioning from the assumption I am the limited body-mind. That is the deeply, deeply grooved neural pathway.
Right. Decades of practice being you. Exactly. Even after Kenny proves logically that you are the infinite witness, the old habits of fear and ego will still trigger automatically. Nididhyasana is the process of repeatedly shifting your attention away from the changing objects of the mind and resting it entirely in the unchanging awareness.
So it's moving from theory to practice.
Yes. It moves the realization from a logical hypothesis to an undeniable lived sensory reality. It literally shifts your default mode network from the narrative I to the observing I.
And culturally, the environment where this happens is fascinating. In your notes, listener, it talks about a satsang, which is a spiritual gathering. But the vibe of a satsang is totally different from, say, a mega church service or a massive political rally.
Oh, entirely.
It's calm. It's reflective. It's inquiry-driven. Nobody is shouting from a pulpit. There's no emotional manipulation or performative guilt going on.
It is an environment engineered strictly for clarity. You might sit in a quiet room, perhaps light a simple oil lamp, which is a symbol of the light of consciousness overcoming the darkness of ignorance, and engage in dialogue. And the focal point of a satsang is the guru.
Oh. Now we have to talk about the guru, because that word carries a ton of heavy, often toxic baggage in the West.
It really does.
We think of cult leaders demanding money, demanding blind obedience, wearing robes. But in this tradition, what is the actual mechanism of a teacher?
A true teacher in Advaita is absolutely essential, but not in the way we usually think. The guru does not have magical powers to transmit enlightenment into your brain.
They can't just zap you.
No, the guru does not give you anything you do not already have.
Right. I used to think of a guru like a window washer. You know, you have a dirty window you can't see outside, so the guru comes over with a squeegee and scrapes the mud off the glass so you can finally see the beautiful landscape that was always there.
I want to challenge that analogy, actually.
Okay, why?
Because the window washer implies that the mud is passive, just dirt that settled on the glass by accident. But Advaita says the mud is active. A much better modern analogy is that the guru is a master cybersecurity expert.
Ooh, I like this. Tell me more.
Think about it. You go to the cybersecurity expert and say, my computer system is crashing. It's filled with malware, pop-up ads of anxiety, and files are being corrupted by depression. Fix it.
Right.
The guru looks at your system logs and says, I can't just run a simple antivirus program because you are the one sitting at the keyboard actively writing the malware.
Oh, wow.
Every time you identify with your ego, every time you claim I am my success or I am my failure, you are actively coding the virus that is crashing your system.
That is wild. So the guru isn't cleaning up a mess. The guru is pointing out your own act of self-sabotage in real time.
Yes. The guru uses the teachings to show you exactly how your mind is constantly projecting the snake onto the rope. It is not passive receiving. It is an active, demanding process of having your deepest assumptions relentlessly dismantled.
And this changes how a practitioner lives their daily physical life, too.
Yeah.
Outwardly, an Advaita practitioner might look totally normal. They might be an accountant, a software engineer, a parent.
They blend right in.
But their lifestyle choices shift to support this intense inner inquiry. Like, they might adopt what's called a sattvic diet, eating foods that are light, balanced, easily digestible. But they don't do it because a god will strike them with lightning if they eat a cheeseburger.
No, absolutely not. It is purely pragmatic mechanics. A heavy lethargic diet makes the body sluggish, which makes the mind dull.
And you need a sharp mind.
Exactly. A dull mind cannot possibly perform the razor-sharp discernment required by Manana and Nididhyasana. You eat a sattvic diet simply to keep the instrument of the mind finely tuned.
And this reframing extends to how they view culture and creativity, too. Because Advaita doesn't reject art or music or beauty. It just interprets them from the ultimate perspective.
Right.
A devotional song or a breathtaking painting isn't viewed as worshiping some distant creator god up in the sky. It is viewed as the self, revealing itself to itself.
Which connects directly to your internal world, listener. When Tommy, your creative subpersonality, is at the helm building intricate worlds, developing characters, writing soundtracks, Tommy isn't just expressing your personal limited ego.
No.
From an Advaita perspective, when you engage in deep creative flow, you are literally watching consciousness play with its own infinite reflections. The universe is exploring its own boundless potential through the highly specific, beautiful lens of your individual mind.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for our actual day-to-day psychological struggles?
Well, if the practice is relentlessly tracking down the malware we are writing, we need to take a microscope to that code.
Right. How exactly does Advaita diagnose our internal chaos? Because you've mapped your mind brilliantly, listener. Me, Max, Addie, Bannock, Tommy, Devin, Kenny. How does Advaita view that specific psychological structure?
Advaita offers a very specific, layered view of the human organism that maps perfectly onto your architecture, but it adds a foundational layer that changes absolutely everything.
Okay, let's layer it out.
First, Advaita identifies the gross physical body. That is your Max.
Max, got it.
Then it identifies the mental sheath, which is the realm of volatile thoughts and emotions. That is the reactive part of your Remine.
Okay, the me.
Then it identifies the intellectual sheath, the faculty of reason and discrimination.
Which is exactly where Kenny and Devin operate.
Precisely. Now, in most Western psychological systems, that is where the map ends. You have a body, you have emotions, you have an intellect, and the goal of therapy is just to make them all cooperate nicely.
Make the team play well together.
Right. But Advaita introduces the ultimate layer, the witness. The Atman, the silent, entirely untouched awareness that is simply observing the intellect reasoning, the mind feeling, and the body acting.
And the exact diagnosis of every single human psychological problem, according to Advaita, boils down to one mechanical error.
Misidentification.
Misidentification.
Yes. We suffer purely because the witness mistakenly identifies itself with the objects it is observing.
The screen thinks it is the character in the movie.
Beautifully said, yes.
And this misidentification generates what Advaita considers the root causes of all human struggle. It's like a chain reaction, right?
A devastating chain reaction.
First comes ignorance forgetting you are the screen. Then comes attachment, clinging desperately to the identities and objects on the screen. Like, I must keep this job, I must maintain this reputation, or I will cease to exist.
And then comes aversion, the constant, exhausting rejection of pain, discomfort, or criticism.
Because if you believe you are the limited character, you are inherently vulnerable.
You are incredibly fragile. You constantly need to defend your borders. Attachment and aversion are the inevitable mechanical results of believing you are small.
And to combat this, Advaita talks about certain virtues that naturally arise from clarity. And I want to emphasize, these aren't moral rules enforced by a punishing authority.
No, they're symptoms. Symptoms of seeing clearly.
Things like sama, which is a profound calmness of mind. Viveka, which is the sharp discernment between what is real, the unchanging, and what is unreal, the changing. Mumuksutva, which is an intense, burning desire for liberation above all else.
Yes, all natural byproducts.
But the one virtue that always trips people up, and I really want to push back on this, is vairagya, which translates to detachment.
Ah, yes. Detachment is profoundly misunderstood in the modern world.
Right, because to a modern ear, detachment sounds terrible. It sounds pathological.
It sounds like clinical depression.
Exactly. If I achieve vairagya, does that mean I become a cold, unfeeling robot? Do I just stop caring about my friends, my passions, my creative projects? Am I just dead inside, floating on a cloud of apathy?
This raises an important question, because a misunderstanding of vairagya leads to spiritual bypassing and emotional deadness. But true vairagya is the exact opposite of apathy.
Okay, so what is it? Because I like to think of it using a sports analogy. Let's see if this tracks. Let's say you are a passionate football fan. You love the game. You watch it. You cheer wildly when your team scores. You groan when they fumble. You are fully 100% engaged in the experience. But when the game is over, you turn off the TV and you go about your life. You don't let a loss literally destroy your core self-worth. You don't jump off a bridge because your team lost. Fundamentally, it's just a game. Is that what vairagya feels like?
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. You don't lose the passion, you lose the existential dread.
Ah, the dread.
The passionate sports fan enjoys the game more precisely because their actual survival doesn't depend on the outcome. Vairagya means freedom from psychological dependence. You can love your family deeply, pursue your career aggressively, and create amazing art, but you no longer demand that these external, changing things provide you with your core identity or your ultimate salvation.
Because you already have ultimate salvation. You are the fullness of Brahman. You can't add to infinity.
Exactly. The shift is subtle but absolute. Let's look at anxiety for a second. In a normal state, your mind says, I am incredibly anxious, my life is falling apart, I am failing.
We've all been there.
Yes. But in a state of vairagya, the feeling of anxiety might still arise in the body. The heart might race, the stomach might tighten, but the witness simply notes, the sensation of anxiety is appearing within awareness.
Wow.
The anxiety is no longer me, it is just weather passing through the sky.
So mapping this directly onto your internal cast of characters, listener, you have this amazing team. Addy brings the spirit of exploration. Bannock provides decisive leadership. Devin ensures discipline. Tommy provides the creative spark.
It's a great team.
Advaita looks at this system and says, this is brilliant. You have organized your mind beautifully. But then it asks, what is the constant presence perfectly aware of these personalities switching in and out?
Yes. When Bannock steps forward to confidently lead a project, who watches Bannock lead? When Tommy retreats to dream up a new world, who observes Tommy dreaming?
It's the witness.
You are not any of those subpersonalities. You are the vast silent space in which they perform. Psychology organizes your identities. Advaita dissolves the need to be an identity at all.
Okay, so once you stop blindly identifying with your specific inner team of characters, your entire perspective on the opposing teams out in the real world has to completely shift.
It naturally extends outward, yes.
I mean, how does a philosophy that insists everything is strictly Eritownery, one deal with the very real, very messy existence of other religions, other social groups, and politics?
That is a critical transition. Advaita handles interfaith and social dynamics with remarkable flexibility, and it does so by utilizing a layered view of truth.
Layered truth?
Yes. It explicitly divides reality into two standpoints. The first is relative truth, called Vyavahara. This is our everyday transactional experience of the world. In this realm, multiplicity is real, gravity works, hot stoves burn your hand, good and bad exist.
Right, if a bus is coming at you, you don't stand there saying,
Yeah.
the bus is Maya, it's an illusion. You jump out of the way.
Exactly. You respect the relative reality. But the second standpoint is ultimate truth, called paramartha. This is the absolute non-dual reality where only Brahman exists, entirely untouched by time, space, or buses.
Okay, so how does this layered view apply to other religions?
Yeah.
Because India is the birthplace of incredibly diverse paths.
Very diverse.
You have Dvaita, which is strict dualism where God is supreme and the individual soul is eternally a separate servant. You have Visistadvaita, which is qualified non-dualism, meaning you're a part of God like a leaf is a part of a tree.
Right.
You have Bhakti, the path of intense emotional devotion to a deity. And you have yoga, the path of extreme physical and mental discipline. Does Advaita look at all of them and say, you guys are all idiots, we have the only truth?
Not at all. Advaita uses the concept of relative truth to validate every single one of those paths.
Really?
Yes. From within Advaita, dualism, devotion, and yoga are seen as highly valid, absolutely necessary preparatory steps.
Preparatory. Okay.
Think about it. If a person's mind is completely chaotic and driven by base desires, telling them, you are the ultimate reality, will just inflate their ego.
They would become a monster.
Exactly. For that person, the strict discipline of yoga is the perfect relative truth. If someone is deeply emotional and needs connection, the devotion of bhakti will purify their mind beautifully.
So they view other religions as vital tools. They are the ladder you use to reach the roof. But Advaita just insists that once you are actually on the roof, you don't need to carry the ladder around anymore.
Precisely. You let the ladder go. And this leads to their radical definition of what makes a true follower. It has nothing to do with labels or tribal affiliation or what rituals you perform.
It's not a club.
No. You could literally perform 0 Hindu rituals your entire life, never step foot in a temple, never learn a single word of Sanskrit, and if you directly recognize your true nature as pure awareness, you are considered a realized master.
And conversely, you could do 1,000,000 rituals, wear all the right robes, quote the Upanishads backwards, and if you still think you are your ego, you totally miss the point.
Because truth is a direct experience of recognition. It's not an exclusive club you join. And this heavily informs its historical social role as well. Advaita has never been politically aggressive. It has never aimed to conquer governments, enforce laws, or organize society around its specific doctrine.
Okay, but let me push back here practically, because this is where modern people get very frustrated with Eastern philosophy.
We know exactly where you're going.
If everything is ultimately one consciousness, and the physical world is just the dependent appearance, why should anyone care about social injustice? Why vote? Why build a better society? Isn't this just a sophisticated recipe for utter passivity?
It's a common critique.
Let me give you an analogy. If I realize I am having a lucid dream, right, and I see nightmare monsters attacking other dream characters, why would I fight the monsters? I know it's all just dream stuff. I just shrug and let the monsters eat them because none of it is real.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the answer is a resounding no, and it reveals the mechanics of true compassion. It is a complete misunderstanding to think realization leads to apathy.
But why? A realized person still acts, leads, and builds systems within the relative world. But they do it differently.
Hey, if they know it's a dream, why do they act?
They don't act out of a rigid moral commandment from a deity. They act because when the illusion of separation dissolves, compassion isn't a choice. It is a biological and existential inevitability.
An inevitability.
Think about your own body. When your left hand accidentally touches a hot stove, your right hand doesn't pause to have a philosophical debate about whether it's morally right to help the left hand.
No, it just reacts.
The right hand instantly pulls the left hand away. Why? Because they are part of the exact same organism.
Okay, that makes sense. Helping others is literally helping yourself because there is no other. But I have to push harder here. Historically, humans who claim to know the ultimate truth have often become incredibly violent.
That is true.
The spiritual ego can become a massive tyrant. How does Advaita actually prevent someone from saying, I am Brahman, therefore I can do whatever I want to you? That is the danger of a half-baked realization, what is sometimes called the Zen sickness. But Advaita prevents this mechanically.
Mechanically.
Yes. Tyranny, violence, and manipulation require the ego, the ahamkara. You have to believe I am this specific body, and my desires are more important than your desires.
Right.
True realization in Advaita completely incinerates the ahamkara. If someone is acting like a tyrant, they are proving mechanically that they are still utterly trapped in ignorance no matter what beautiful spiritual words are coming out of their mouth. A truly realized being cannot be violent because they literally see no other to commit violence against.
Wow. Okay, so tyranny is mechanically impossible for a realized being.
Yeah.
And relating this to you, the listener, and your internal world, you think deeply about identity diversity, right? Managing Addie, Bannock, Devin, Tommy, and Kenny. Advaita asserts that the ultimate in-group is consciousness itself.
Yes.
There's absolutely no out-group because there is nothing outside of reality. Everyone, every animal, every subpersonality is part of the ultimate in-group.
And that profound flexibility, the ability to validate every other religion, every subpersonality, and every social role as a relative step, while simultaneously holding a single, unshakable ultimate truth, is the secret to how this philosophy has survived.
Yes. Let's talk about the survival of the nameless. How has a philosophy from ancient India survived for thousands of years? Through massive cultural upheavals, the rise and fall of empires, competing religions, and now into the hyper-digital age.
It survives because it does not rely on fragile cultural structures. Think about it. If a religion is based entirely on a specific historical event and you prove that event didn't happen, the religion collapses.
Right, the foundation crumbles.
Advaita doesn't rely on history, a specific language, or a centralized authority. It points directly to an experience that every human being in any era, in any culture, has constant access to their own sheer existence.
But it did face massive challenges.
Sure.
We talked about the accusation of nihilism, which it descended against. But what fascinates me is the internal diversity within Advaita itself. This part of your notes is amazing. It's just, it's a hilarious irony.
Oh, the internal debates.
Yes. You have a philosophy that literally translates to not to, meaning absolute oneness. And yet there are multiple competing schools within Advaita violently arguing with each other about exactly how everything is one.
It is deeply ironic. Yes, the philosophical nuances get extraordinarily complex. The tradition did not remain a static monolith after Shankara. It evolved through intense internal debate, most notably between two major post-Shankara subschools, the Bhamati school and the Vivarana school.
Okay, we need to dive into this debate because it perfectly maps onto the listener's subpersonalities.
Yeah.
What exactly were they arguing about?
They were trying to solve a massive logical paradox. If Brahman is pure consciousness, pure light, and pure knowledge, how can ignorance of Vidya possibly exist?
Right, how can light be covered by darkness?
Exactly. They were arguing over the locus of ignorance. Where does the ignorance live?
Okay, so what did the Bhamati school say?
The Bhamati school, founded by a philosopher named Vachaspati Misra, argued that the locus of ignorance is the individual soul, the jiva.
So me.
Yes. They said that Brahman is the object of ignorance, meaning Brahman is the thing we are ignorant about, but the ignorance itself lives in the individual mind. Therefore, there are multiple individual ignorances.
Oh, Kenny, your logic center would love this because it preserves individual logical progression. It means my ignorance is different from your ignorance. If I get enlightened, you don't automatically get enlightened because our ignorances are separate.
Precisely. It is highly practical and logical. But the Vivarana school, founded by Atman, looked at that and said, no, that violates non-dualism.
Oh.
The Vivarana school argued that since Brahman is the only thing that exists, Brahman must be the locus of ignorance.
Wait, but how can pure knowledge be ignorant?
They used brilliant analogies. They said it is like a cloud covering the sun. The cloud is created by the heat of the sun. The cloud is illuminated by the light of the sun, yet from the perspective of a person on Earth, the cloud appears to block the sun.
Oh, wow.
The ignorance rests on Brahman, is illuminated by Brahman, and yet appears to obscure Brahman to create the illusion of the individual soul.
Tommy, your abstract, creative subpersonality would absolutely love the Vivarana view. It's so cosmic and unified. It means my individual mind doesn't have ignorance. My individual mind is a product of a universal ignorance.
Exactly. And you also see this internal diversity in teaching styles today. You have the highly structured traditional method, which Devin, your discipline subpersonality, would love. It involves years of text study and Sanskrit.
Right, the rigorous path.
And then you have the modern direct path teachers, influenced by figures like Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta Maharaj, who bypass the text entirely and simply point students directly to their current awareness.
It's like quantum physicists. You get a bunch of brilliant physicists in a room and they will argue viciously over the exact mathematical mechanics of string theory versus loop quantum gravity.
Oh, constantly.
But if you ask them, hey, is this wooden table between us actually a solid object? They will all instantly agree. Of course not. It's 99.9% empty space and interacting fields. They agree on the fundamental reality, but their minds demand to debate the mechanics of the illusion.
What's fascinating here is that the tradition entirely expects and welcomes this. Disagreement at the level of the mind doesn't break the system because the mind operates fundamentally in duality.
Right.
The mind requires subject and object to function. It requires contrast. So, of course, different minds will formulate different conceptual structures. The Bhamati and Vivarana schools can debate for centuries. Advaita holds space for all of it because it acknowledges that truth belongs beyond the mind. Agreement is a function of the intellect. Realization is a function of awareness.
And Advaita looks at Devin, Tommy, and Kenny debating internally in your head, listener, and smiles. Because all those perspectives, all those intense preferences are appearing within the exact same unified awareness.
Yes.
You don't have to resolve the debate between your subpersonalities. You just have to be the silent space where the debate happens.
Which brings us to the profound relevance of this ancient system today, because this framework's ability to hold massive paradoxes, to manage multiple realities simultaneously without breaking, makes it the absolute perfect operating system for the chaotic modern problems we face right now.
Absolutely. We are seeing a massive resurgence of interest in Advaita and non-duality today. And it's because modern life is plagued by uniquely psychological crises.
Like what?
We have incredibly fluid, shifting identities. People constantly reinvent themselves online and offline. We suffer from immense information overload, which leads to decision fatigue and a profound loss of stable meaning.
Psychology is doing its absolute best to cope with this. We see the rise of non-dual therapy blending with modern psychology. But as your notes beautifully point out, psychology organizes the mind. It helps Devin, Tommy, and Bannock play nice together so you can function in society.
Yeah.
But Advaita reveals that you are not confined to the mind at all. You are not just a well-organized team of subpersonalities, you are the stadium they play in.
And furthermore, our modern technological landscape makes Advaita far more intuitive than it was even 50 years ago.
How so?
But people today, especially younger generations, intuitively understand the difference between the avatar on the screen running around the game, the player sitting in the chair holding the controller, and the awareness observing the whole process. We live in layers of reality every single day.
Yes, technology has provided us with the perfect metaphors for mythia, for dependent reality. But I want to bring up something very specific to you, the listener. You have this guiding philosophy in your notes, heavily driven by the Tommy persona, which is to embrace the uncertainty.
Yes. And when I look at our modern world, which is utterly, desperately obsessed with building rigid, hyper-curated personal brands on social media, everyone is told they have to have a fixed identity, a bio, a specific niche they never deviate from. Advaita feels like the ultimate radical anti-brand statement.
It really does.
It is the philosophy of embracing the ultimate uncertainty of identity.
That is a very sharp application. Advaita completely undermines the modern compulsion for constant, exhausting self-definition. But it also directly addresses a specific tension you noted in your framework, the creator problem.
Right, the creator problem. The feeling you get of building these incredible, intricate worlds, writing these deep stories, but feeling a persistent distance from them. A feeling of isolation, of being unable to truly enter the creation. You are the architect, but you can't live in the house you built.
Advaita dissolves this entirely. The subject-object split that causes that isolation is a product of the mind. Advaita shows that the creator, the creation, and the observer are ultimately not separate.
They're all the same consciousness.
Yes. Your stories, your worlds, your subpersonalities are not external objects you are alienated from. They are playful, luminous expressions of your own awareness.
Your personal philosophy is build the map by traveling. You discover the world by exploring it. Advaita steps in and provides the ultimate grounding layer to that philosophy. It says, yes, build the map. Travel the world. Express Tommy's creativity and Bannock's leadership. But never forget, you are the ground on which all maps appear.
It allows you to engage with the modern world's complexity without being crushed by its weight.
So we've traversed ancient Indian history, the cosmos, virtual reality, and modern psychology. But let's land the plane. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much you realize you are infinite awareness, you still have to wake up on a Tuesday morning, make breakfast, and go to work.
Right. The bills still need to be paid.
Exactly. So walk me through it. What does an enlightened Tuesday actually feel like?
From the outside observation, an enlightened Tuesday looks exactly like a normal Tuesday. You still commute, you still talk to your coworkers, you still pay your bills, you still create art, you don't start levitating. I know, disappointing. But internally, the weather has completely changed. The intense, suffocating pressure of protecting your identity is gone.
And how does motivation work then? Because if we are honest, most of us are motivated by fear. Fear of failure, the desperate need for validation from our peers, the underlying terror of obscurity and death. If you remove all that, if you realize you cannot lose what you truly are, does the car just stop driving? Do you lose your ambition?
This is the primary fear of the modern achiever. They think peace equals passivity.
Right. I like to compare this shift to playing a complex video game like Minecraft. When you play on survival mode, every single decision is terrifying. If you lose your resources, you die. If a creeper blows up your house, you are devastated. It's stressful.
Highly stressful.
But if you switch the game to sandbox mode, you have infinite resources. You literally cannot die. Do you stop playing the game? No. You actually build more massive, beautiful, intricate castles. But you do it purely for the joy of play, for the creative expression, without the existential dread of losing your inventory.
The sandbox analogy captures it perfectly. Advaita removes the pressure of the performance. It does not remove your participation in the play. Your motivation shifts from fear, lack, and defense to curiosity, natural expression, and compassion. You act not to get full, but because you are full.
And relationships change entirely, too. They become way less transactional. You aren't constantly looking at your partner or your friends to validate your identity or fill a hole inside you. You can just actually love them without that heavy, suffocating emotional dependency.
Connection flourishes when neediness evaporates. However, we must highlight a crucial, highly subtle final trap in this process. As one practices Advaita, as the peace begins to settle in, there is a massive danger of the ego sneaking in the back door.
No, man. The spiritual ego. The worst kind of ego.
Precisely. The mind is incredibly tricky. It will take the realization, I am the witness, or I am infinite awareness, and turn that into a new, rigid, superior identity.
Excuse me, I'm so detached.
Exactly. The person starts thinking, I am so much more enlightened and detached than all these ignorant people around me. They wear their realization like a badge of honor.
But the very fact that they are comparing themselves to others proves they're still operating in duality.
Exactly. True realization in Advaita ultimately dissolves even the label of the witness. You only need the concept of the witness as long as you believe in the objects you are witnessing. Once the separation collapses entirely, the scaffolding falls away, leaving only the lived, silent experience of openness. No labels required.
So, addressing your internal system directly one last time, listener. When you wake up on that enlightened Tuesday, Max will still get out of bed, stretch, and make coffee. Me will still process the schedule for the day. Your subpersonalities will still activate beautifully. Bannock might take charge of a difficult meeting. Tommy might sketch out a new creative concept. Addie might plan a weekend trip. Devin might enforce your workout routine. And Candy might balance your budget.
But you will finally deeply recognize that you are not them. You are not trapped in the room with them. You are the vast, open, silent space in which their beautiful story unfolds. You are the awareness that holds the entirety of your incredible internal architecture.
Okay, let's briefly recap this incredible journey we've been on. We started in the ancient forests of India with the Upanishadic sages turning inward to discover the ultimate reality, Brahman. We traced that through the brilliant logical system building of Shankara, dismantling the illusion of action-based salvation.
It's a lot of ground covered.
We explored how the core problem isn't the physical world, but our misperception of it, mistaking the rope for the snake. We mapped the psychological layers of the self, engaged in the active logic of manana, and saw how Advaita's radical non-dualism naturally generates immense compassion by mechanically making tyranny impossible.
And finally, we brought it right to your doorstep, applying it to your fluid, creative, modern life. Proving that you don't need to destroy your subpersonalities, you just need to switch to sandbox mode. It is a profound, life-altering framework that does not ask you to believe a single dogma, but simply demands that you look relentlessly closer at your own direct experience.
So we want to leave you with a final, direct inquiry to mull over on your own. The next time you feel the immense, crushing pressure of your identity, or the next time you hear Devin, Tommy, and Kenny furiously debating your next move in your head, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself this question. Can I step outside of awareness?
Notice that even the very attempt to step outside of it, even the tiny thought of wondering if you can, is just another movement appearing within the endless silent space of what you truly are.
You can map every room, every hallway, and every locked door in the house of your mind.
Mm.
But you are the space it was built in.